Access 2007, putting an application together. We are going to start from scratch. It's going to be a quick review, but it's going to allow you to see that you can pop some tables, some forms, some reports in there, and create a switchboard, which will then be the master for your whole application. It's a form, but it's a set of buttons that will guide your user into opening a specific form or printing a specific report, which, after all, is what the majority of your users are going to be doing. Once you create all this information, then you save it as an ACCDE file so it will execute for your users when they double-click on the shortcut that you can place on their desktop. If there are some objects that you don't want to see if people are going to be opening up this database or this file, you can certainly hide them, and really that's the special sauce behind putting this application together. So let's get started. We are going to start from scratch. This is Access, but we're going to create a new database. So I'll select New from the Office button, and here I get to select the name for my database. It's going to be an ACCDB file, and I'm simply going to call it Contacts. I'm going to store it in the default location, which is my documents. Now I'll select Create. From here, I get just a basic table. Instead of using this table, though, I'm going to import information from another Access file. So on my external data ribbon, I can select Access, and I'll navigate. I have a file that's called Contacts Backup, which has my information. I would like to import a table, so I'll click OK, and I'm just going to choose Contacts, and then OK. Do I want to save my steps? Nah, I'm not going to do this again. Here I have my contacts table. I can open it up so you'll see it. It's just simply the basic information you'd have: last name, first name, address, city, state, zip code, and phone number. That is my contacts table. Now we can create a quick order entry form. I'll choose Create, and I will choose Form. From here, I have just a basic form, and now I'm going to create a basic report. Oh yeah, of course I want to save that. Contacts form. I'm going to use spaces in between my names here. So Contacts form, and now I'm going to make sure I have my source selected, and I'll choose Create Report. I'll just do a basic report here, and I will choose Save Contacts Report. Okay, now I'm going to create one more report. Make sure my source is selected. Create. This time I want to choose a labels report so I can print out those labels as I'm doing perhaps a mail merge. So 2 inches by 4 inches will be fine. I'll choose Next. And the default font and color is fine. Next. Here I get to choose the fields that would appear in my label. I double-clicked on first name. I want a space in between first name and last name, so I press space on my space bar, double-click on last name. I'll hit Enter because I want address to be on the next line. I'll hit Enter. I'd like city. I want a space, so space bar, state, space, zip. Oh, that looks like what I'd want to see on a label. Next, how would I like to sort this? I'll sort it by last name, but some people would sort it by last name and then by zip code as well. Well, maybe I'll do that. I think you might get some sort of benefit from the post office if you order it by zip code. So I should have put it first, but I'm putting it by last name. I'm sorting it by last name because if I ever print out documents, I'd like to sort them by last name also, and then I can easily match up my documents to the envelopes that will have labels on them. I'll choose Next. What do I want to call this? Labels Contacts? That's great. I'll choose Finish. Now I have 2 reports, a form and a table, and they're all laid out like this in the navigation bar, but I'd like to order them by object. So I can right-click on the navigation bar header, and I can choose Category, and I can choose Object Type, and now I'm seeing this laid out in a manner that is, to me, more logical. Of course, choose whatever will suit you best. That was a very quick way to create 4 objects. I want to remind you that really you shouldn't do it this quickly. You should go into design view of your table, and you should make sure you set up the right properties, and you should set up more advanced forms and reports. You can go into design view and layout view to make them just perfect. But those are all topics that are covered in other nuggets within this Access 2007 series, so hopefully you have an opportunity to take a look at all those details. Here, we're just concentrating on the next part, which is putting the application together. Okay, here's the thing. It may take you a couple weeks to create an Access application, but it may take you even longer than that to plan it, because it's not something that you just sit down one day and do. If you're going to have users that will be accessing your data and your information, you have focus groups, you have meetings, you need to gather information. And one way to do that is to collect reports that they use already and see what type of data they like to review, what type of data they need to get their job done. So you might start with looking at reports even though you're thinking about creating your tables first. Once you figure out the type of data they need to view, then, and what's relevant, because some of that might be garbage, you got to siphon through that. Then you need to think about what type of data you need to collect and the general workflows of people, who accesses what type of form, who has information to input what type of information. So from there, you'll determine what your forms will look like, and believe it or not, all of that is going to be assembled together into your overall masterpiece, your tables, because your workflow for your users, who has data, what they input, who needs to see what in a report output, doesn't matter when you're collecting information in your tables, because you might have 10 different people that input all different types of data, but it might all make sense in a few different tables that you'll relate back together. You don't want to waste database space, you don't want to waste people's time, so that's why a lot of planning is going to come into play. So where are we now? We have a basic database, and we need to think now about when our users launch our application, what are they going to do? Well, I'll tell you. They're going to open up the contacts form to edit and enter information. They're going to want to print the contacts report. They're not going to need to design it. They're not going to need to make changes. All they're going to do is print it, and they're just going to need to print those labels onto, well, labels, of course. So that's 3 things they'll need to do, and they'll need to close the application. So I am going to pre-plan and create some macros so that when they click a button, they'll be able to just automatically open the report, print it, and close the report so that they don't have to spend time doing anything other than that. So let's go ahead and create a macro. I'm in Print Preview right now, so I can close Print Preview, I can close the field list, I can close Design View, and this report as well. I'd like to create a macro now, so I'll go to Create, Macro, and I'm going to first open up a form so I can start typing report, open report. What report do I want to open? I go down here to make that selection. The contacts report. View it in report view? No, how about print preview? I don't want to have any filters or wear conditions, and normal mode will be fine with me. So open report, and now I want to ask them or warn them that it's going to be printed. So message box, click OK to print the report, contacts report. Beep, yeah, sure, type informative. It's not critical or a warning, and my title will be print report. That's my setup, but I need to actually do the action, right? So notice LMNOP is not an item in there, but run command is an item. Let's see what commands we have available here. All right, look at these. Add from Outlook, that's great. Close all, data entry, exit. We need to go to the P's. Notice that pretty much anything you can possibly do is available here in a command that you can run. I'll choose print. And now I want to close. I'll just start typing. It's so much easier just to start typing. Close. What do I want to close? I want to close a report. Which report do I want to close? The contacts report. All right, let me save that. My macro name is going to be print reports or report. I'll choose OK. What happens when I run it? Click OK to print the report. Ooh, I had a typo. OK, so good. My user will get to choose what they're printing to. I'll click cancel there. And I do want to actually add another macro in here, which is going to print my labels. So to have more than one macro in the same macro group, I can go back to my design ribbon, choose macro names. I want to change this message box though. I don't like to have typos. And now I have one macro group, print report, but I can have two macros in there. This first one will be print contacts report, and my second one will be print contacts labels. I'm going to do this the exact same way. So open report, my report name this time is labels in print preview. Again, even though the user barely sees that, I want to have a message box. My message box is going to say, please verify that there are 2-inch by 4-inch labels in the printer. And click, click OK. Beep yes, type again, this is information. The title will be print labels. Now I need to run a command. Run command. Same command as before. Print. It's nice when you know what the commands are. You don't have to scroll through the menu as much. And now I want to close. What do I want to close? I want to close the report. And which report? The labels. Again, this is for my users to make their workflow easy. They don't want to spend time. They're just trying to print a report and print labels. They don't care who it's going to. They're just assuming that that data is right in the table and that the format is right for their output. So this is really good for their workflow. All right, I have these two. I'm going to click Save. Now I'm going to close these macros, and we're ready to create that switchboard, which is really a form, but it's going to be the foundation of our entire application. How do we create a switchboard? Well, it's not on the Create tab. It's not just a regular old form. It's a database tool, Switchboard Manager. This says, hey, you don't have a switchboard. Would you like to create one? Yes, you got to start somewhere. Main switchboard default. I would like to edit this switchboard. I'm going to call it contacts, even though it's only going to call it switchboard. See, in the forms now it exists. It's just called switchboard. I do want to add some new buttons to this switchboard though. My first one is going to be Open Contacts Form. My command is going to be, believe it or not, Open Form. Now I could open it in add mode, which means my user would see no records. They couldn't navigate. They could only add information. But I'd like them to be able to see records and edit them and add new records as well. What are they going to open? The contacts form. Okay. So this is a button that we'll see called Open Contacts Form. Let's do a couple new ones. This one will be Print Contacts Report. Whoa, I have a hard time getting one finger off the shift while I'm typing with the O. Am I going to a switchboard? No. I'm actually going to open a report. Oh, I'm not opening a report. I am actually going to run a macro. Which macro? Print report, print contacts report. Okay. I'll do another new button. This one will be print labels. I'm going to run the different macro here. Same macro group, but this time it's the print contact labels macro. Okay. And I need one more because I want them to be able to exit the application without having to find that command somewhere else in the Access program. Luckily, it's called Exit Application. There's no other choice. It's going to do what it's going to do. Okay. If I wanted to, I could select an item and I could choose to move it down, which would just be rearranging the buttons on my switchboard, but I like the way this is. There's no Save button here, so I'll click Close. I'll click Close, and here's my switchboard. If I double click on this, I see what my switchboard will look like. I can always go into Design View and I can change the color, the font, whatever it is that I need to do in there. I could make it bigger by resizing this area, but I'm happy, so I'll go back into Form View and let's test it out. Open Contacts Form, there it is. There's our Close Form button. Print Contacts Report. Click OK to print the report. OK. Oh, cancel, and it closed it. Print Labels. Please verify that there are, OK. Ooh, another typo. OK. Up, cancel. And then Exit Application. Since I exited my application, I do need to reopen it. So I'll click More, Contacts ACC DB. Here we go. We're back at square one. Now let's turn this into an application. Database Tools, make ACCDE. I'm going to store this. How about I put it on my desktop, and I'll choose Save. All right, it's been saved. Let's test it out. I'm going to click Close for my Access file, double-click on this icon, and it opens up just like it did, and I can double-click on Switchboard, and I can choose to open my contacts form. I can close my form. Okay. Exit application. Ah, it's closed, and here I am in Microsoft Access. I can open that up again. Instead of going into my desktop, where I have the ACCDE file, which is just for people who want to execute that application and not make changes, I can go into my Contacts ACCDB file, which is the main database, and I can come back in and make a few changes, which I am, because I would like for that switchboard item to pop up by default. I don't want my user to have to go, well, what do? I'll double-click on switchboard. I want that to launch automatically. So this is in the Office button under Access Options. And I always have to resize this. It likes to throw it out there really large. This is the current database. My application title will be Contacts. If you had an icon that you'd like to assign to this, you could browse out to a place where you've saved either a bitmap file or an ICO file. What do I want to display as soon as this application launches? I'd like to display the switchboard. Notice it just is called switchboard. It's your default switchboard. Even though I named it Contacts, it refers to it as switchboard. And I can make some other choices also. I could choose not to display the status bar. I could choose that instead of seeing tabbed documents, I have overlapping windows. There's some other items. I'll choose OK. It says you must close and reopen the current database for these options to take effect. I'll choose OK. If I go back to Database Tools, I can now make another ACCDE file. I'm going to use the same file. I'm just going to override that. I'll choose Save. It already exists. Do you want to replace it? Yes, please. All right. So let's close this and now test it out. Again, this is what the user would see. I'd put this on their desktop for them to use. So there, it automatically launched to my switchboard, and it gave it as a window instead of those tabs, because I think that's a little bit more easier for your users to grasp hold of. They might not be used to those tabs. All right, I'm going to exit this application again because I want to make a few different changes. There's a couple other items you can do to protect this information. I could choose to hide the macros so my users don't see those. I could choose actually to hide all of the information that exists in here. And now my users don't see anything, and I can even hide my navigation bar. But what happens, I was right-clicking and choosing hide. What happens if I want to bring them back? I need to right-click and choose navigation items, show hidden objects. Okay, now I see them again, and I can tell they're hidden because they're very, very faint. But that's okay. I don't want to see my hidden objects, just as long as you know that you can do that. And now I can make a couple other cosmetic changes. I'll go back to my Office button into Access Objects, and here, back to my current database, and I'm application titled Contacts. I've got overlapping windows. Now I can make a few other changes. I can choose not to display that navigation pane at all, and I could create a whole new custom ribbon so I don't have that viewed. If you're really going to create an outstanding application, you can create your own custom menus, your custom toolbars, and you can just have all your forms only be on that screen, and then your users aren't even feeling like they're in that Access application at all. I'm giving you the tips here to do that. I can choose to remove the information from my ribbons and no default shortcut menus. And now I'll choose OK. OK. And let's go back. And OK, we did this, made these updates in the ACCDE. So let's click Close here and double click and see what happens. Now I have my pop-up window and I have just the home ribbon. All my other items are gone. And if I minimize that, my user wouldn't even probably know that that exists there. I could also have gone back into design view of this form and made this form be a lot larger if I wanted to. So here I've created all the buttons that I think my users could possibly need. I made sure and did some cosmetic items in the options under this current database. And now I have an ACCDE file that my users access in order to get their work done. But I myself can open up that base ACCDB file, and I'm the one that can get in there and bring those hidden objects back, or choose to display more of my ribbons or create custom ribbons, whatever it is that I need to do to get that done. So this is pretty cool. I mean, we spent a lot of time creating the base objects, but now finally we were able to put all those objects back together again so you can do what Access is supposed to do. Allow your users to input data and allow them to see the data. Hopefully you see how fascinating and how cool Access is. Overall, what we did was we created an application. We seriously went in there and we imported data into a table, we made a form, we made a report, and we made a macro. Pretty fantastic. Then we went in and created a switchboard, which is under Database Tools, and this is really a form. You can get back into design view of your switchboard to make some property changes or some cosmetic changes, but you can always go back to your Database Tools to Switchboard Manager to add buttons, edit buttons, or remove buttons. Overall, for your users, you choose the Make ACCDE file here in Access 2007 in order for them to have something that they can work with. And you can always hide objects from view that you don't want your users to know are even there, but you can bring them back by right-clicking and going into your navigation options. Because what your users don't know exists won't ever be touched by them. Security by obscurity, as it's sometimes been called. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.